And I'm Dan Morfitt, and this is your daily rundown on Channel 7. Now, diabetes is a disease we're hearing more and more about. And this week, Diabetes Awareness Week, we want to help dispel the myths about the disease. To help us on this, we've invited on a couple of experts. We have Head of the North for Diabetes UK, Stephen Ryan.
Hello.
Thank you for coming in. And Service Champion, Alan Campbell.
Hello.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Now, if you have a story that you'd like to share on the show, please let us know about it. But first, let's talk about diabetes. Diabetes Awareness Week. We hear all these stories in the press about diabetes type 2, how you get that from being obese and from eating sugary snacks. And then there's type 1. Can you explain the difference between them?
Of course we can, yeah. Type 1 diabetes basically is a condition relating to your pancreas. It decides it's going to stop producing insulin. It's nothing to do with lifestyle, nothing to do with obesity, nothing to do with anything you can prevent. We don't know the cause of it, we can't prevent it. Type 2 diabetes is also to do with the insulin and the blood glucose in your sugars, but it's more to do with lifestyle. So it's very much one around your weight, your diet, your exercise, your waist circumference, that kind of thing. So that's what we call the lifestyle diabetes. Both are on the increase, but 90% of diabetes is type 2 diabetes. What we're keen to promote this week is understanding the difference between the two types, but also to make people aware that you can do things to stop yourself getting type 2 diabetes and to reduce your risk of complications should you already have diabetes.
So that's the thing, when, in Diabetes Awareness Week, we've got to be aware that there are these two types.
Yeah, absolutely. A third of people still think that type 1 diabetes is connected with weight. So that's a myth we want to dispel this week.
And what type of diabetes do you have, Alan?
I've got type 1.
And how long have you had type 1 diabetes?
23 years. And it was just a pure simple case of I was drinking a lot, peeing a lot, losing weight, feeling really tired. And my partner at the time said that I was going to the doctor the following morning, and about 1 o'clock afternoon, my GP was knocking on my door saying, "You've got diabetes, you need to go into hospital."
So you found all these, symptoms of you drinking a lot, you peeing a lot.
Yeah.
Did you think, oh no, what's triggered this off, or?
Yeah, of course you do. You because it's your own health. It's you worry about it, don't you? And being men, we tend not to go to the not to go to the doctors, and that sort of stuff, and not talk about it. Yeah, but it was, and because my partner was heavily pregnant as well at the time, that sort of like added to it, because it was like I was waking her up 16, 17 times a night to get out of bed, get to the toilet, have a drink and do this and do that, you know what I mean? So yeah.
So you were already way into adulthood and it just came from nowhere, and that can happen with type 1 diabetes.
It can. My son has type 1 diabetes. He was diagnosed at age 4, and the great thing about it is it comes on so quickly.
Yeah.
It comes on within days or weeks, whereas type 2 can develop over many, many years. Someone can have type 2 diabetes and not know it for up to 10 years. Yeah. So very, very different in terms of how they develop.
So when you're managing your type 1 diabetes, what do you do to manage it?
I'm connected to a pump, so I've got this little gadget in my pocket.
Oh, right now?
Yeah. So I'm constantly connected to my pump.
So that looks like a little iPod, basically, but it's not.
So that's delivering insulin to me, drip feeding insulin to me, 24 hours a day. And then when I eat, I count my carbs, do my glucose levels at the time, and then tell my pump how many grams of carbohydrates I'm about to eat, and it'll tell me how much insulin to take.
So you've got to be really careful about what you put in your mouth, really.
Well, again, that's another myth, that people with diabetes can't eat certain foods.
Okay.
Just because I've got type 1 diabetes doesn't mean I can't eat chocolate. It just means I can't eat chocolate, every minute of every day. I can probably have it once a fortnight.
Because that is one of the myths, isn't it? It's like, you're diabetic.
Yeah, you've got
to have this special diabetic food.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's one thing we want to get away from. A healthy diet for someone with diabetes is a healthy diet, full stop. Yeah. And you can have your cakes and your treats as long as you take the right insulin to balance them out. Yeah.
So while it looks quite cool in a supermarket having a special diabetic section, it's a complete misnomer.
We don't really promote diabetic food as such at all.
The thing with diabetic food is it costs more and it tastes less.
and
that's all I can say, really.
What you've got with your permanent insulin pump, is that normal for somebody with type 1 diabetes, or is that severe?
It's becoming a lot more common.
Yeah.
Wow.
Becoming a lot more common now.
Basically, someone with type 1 diabetes will go immediately onto insulin.
Yeah.
Someone who has type 2 may manage it for a while with exercise and with diet and with other tablets, but generally speaking will develop to need insulin as well. But type 1s must have insulin straight away, or they will die.
Yeah.
So you're type 1, the type 2 diabetes type, that 90% of people with diabetes are suffering from now. You're saying it's a lifestyle thing?
Largely, yeah. I mean, the good news about type 2 in a way is that there's some modifiable factors and there's some things that you can't change. You can't change your age, you can't change your sex, your ethnic background, or your family history of diabetes, but you can change your diet, you can do more exercise, you can lose weight, you can control your circumference.
Yeah.
So there's things that you can do to reduce your risk of getting type 2 diabetes, and that's one positive message for this week. You know, it's not a case of you will get diabetes because you're overweight, absolutely not. There are steps you can take all the time to make healthy changes in your lifestyle to reduce the risk of getting type 2.
And people do you think a lot of people are now sort of resigned to type 2 diabetes?
That's the worry. I mean, we have these conversations every 3 or 6 months around the rising tide of diabetes in the UK and the sense of inevitability about it, but it isn't. You know, there's steps you can take all the time as both individuals and as communities to really tackle that question around healthy lifestyles and healthy food choices.
Yeah. And research-wise, because research is getting better and better year by year, that inevitability, that people going, well, I don't care about my lifestyle, I'll just keep cramming my face with fatty, sugar-filled food because, you know what, diabetes will get cured soon. Is that a fear in Diabetes Awareness Week? Are you thinking, because...
As a type 1 dad, I would love diabetes to get cured.
I would as well.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
totally.
I'm guessing research is happening, but
research is happening all the time. We are the major sponsor of research on diabetes in the UK. If people want to help us, one great thing they can do for us is to fundraise for us, because the only way we're going to cure diabetes is through research, and that costs money. So people can cycle for us, swim for us, run for us, walk for us, jump out of airplanes for us, bake cakes for us, whatever you want to do, we can help you actually make that activity turn into money to go to research to cure diabetes.
And that's really, really important.
Absolutely crucial.
As well, you know, a lot of the arguments about diabetes in the press has mainly been about type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
But a lot of the research in the press has been about how much the drugs are costing the NHS and how much of a proportion of the NHS's budget is now going to be having to be spent on diabetes.
The important message here is that, diabetes costs £10 billion a year.
Excuse me?
£10 billion a year, but 80% of that goes on treating complications that are preventable. So actually, early diagnosis of diabetes leads to better management of diabetes, means less complications, means money saved for the NHS.
Not to...
So what Stephen said earlier about someone can have it for 10 years without even knowing it, you know, there's another myth that type 1's worse than type 2, and it's not. Okay, for type 1, you need to go onto insulin very quickly, otherwise you become very ill and you die. Type 2 comes in a lot slower and a lot longer, but the end results are the same, complications.
What are those complications?
Nerve damage in your feet, eyes, kidneys,
Heart attacks,
strokes.
Almost anything you care to name can happen from diabetes.
It's a blood-related disease, so it affects every part of the body.
And it could lead to amputations, perhaps?
There's 135 amputations a week relating to diabetes.
135 a week?
A week, yeah.
So people losing limbs, again, costing money again.
Yeah. Well, you imagine if you lose a leg, you need a wheelchair, you need additional support. That's another bill for the NHS.
And again, in 90% of cases, it's this type 2 diabetes that can be prevented. Let's look again at that pump that is constantly filling you with insulin in your body. Because when you came into the office earlier on today, I didn't twig at all. So
it's just like, it's there.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on it for
23 years.
No, I've not been on this for 23 years.
Okay.
I've been on this for about 7 years now.
And have you seen a change in technology and a change in understanding about diabetes over those years?
When I was first diagnosed, when you test your testing kit, where you prick your finger and test your blood, it would take probably 2 or 3 minutes for that to work. Now it's 5 seconds.
Is that the holding it up against an old sort of litmus test thing and seeing?
No. It's like a prick your finger sort of thing.
Okay.
So it's like you got a little test strip.
Those cargo pants come in very handy for everything you're carrying around.
I need them. So you got a little meter, and you got test strips here, and then you put your finger, put that in there, put your finger, put a drop of blood on it, and it takes 5 seconds to read what your blood glucose level is now.
And this is your life now, but it's saved your life, all this equipment that you use every day. And this is the same for people with type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes to varying effects.
Yeah, I mean, technology is changing all the time. There's implants now you can get where you just swipe your arm to get your blood sugar reading, which is tremendous.
Swipe your arm?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
So it's like a round disc that you implant every 2 weeks, is it?
Yeah.
You change it every 2 weeks. and then you've got like another handheld device about that big, and you basically just do that.
This is
And
like
it tells
Wendy
you
before talking about boys with their toys and their gadgets.
Yeah.
So sadly, we're no further along to getting a cure.
We're getting closer.
Closer.
We're getting closer all the time. And as I say, one thing we do as an organisation is to fund that research. So that is a vitally important part of what we do.
So,
we also have local support groups, people who've got diabetes, who want to meet other people with diabetes, share their stories, share their tips, share their way they're coping with strategy with diabetes. Go to your local group. We can again put you in touch with that through our Warrington office.
And it's that awareness, isn't it, for people to talk about it? Because I think a few years ago, my nana had diabetes type 1. So I remember the old prick testing and stuff like that. People didn't talk about it. It was sort of hush-hush.
But it might not have been type 1. It might have been type 2, but she'd gone on to insulin.
Yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it?
And that's another myth, sorry. People think that when you go onto insulin, you change your type, and you don't.
You don't.
If you are diagnosed as type 2, and you go onto insulin, you are then a type 2 insulin dependent.
Got you.
Yeah, you don't become a type 1.
If you want all information about this, because it can be quite confusing, there's a lot of information, we can't talk about it all. Is there a good website to go and check out?
You can go and check out our own website, www.diabetes.org.uk. One thing you should do there, if you're worried about your risk of developing type 2 diabetes, there's something called the Know Your Risk questionnaire there. About 8 questions, takes 5 minutes to do, and will give you an indication of whether you're at high, medium or low risk of developing type 2 diabetes. That's on the website, worthwhile doing it. If you're concerned though, go and see your healthcare professional, it's what they're there for. We'd far rather people were concerned and hadn't tested for diabetes, because the earlier you're tested if you've got diabetes, the better your chances of managing it successfully and avoiding complications.
It's just that awareness, and that's the whole point of Diabetes Awareness Week.
It is, yep. So if you're tired, you're thirsty, going to the toilet, getting thinner, get tested. If you have any of those symptoms in your family, your friends, you see them, talk to them around diabetes.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. Hopefully you can get some more fundraising, people getting involved, and people can get ideas and more information from you.
Come and see us on one of our roadshows as well over the summer.
So you're out and about. Alan, thank you for coming in.
Welcome.
And Stephen, thank you so much. Right, if you have a story that you would like to share on the show, you can get in touch with our producer Emmy at The Daily Rundown on Twitter, or pop us an email at dailyrundown@thattv.com, and you could be here next week. After our break, we have something to say, where our guests will be able to rant and rave about whatever they like. See you in about 3 minutes' time. This is The Daily Rundown.